As I stepped out of the taxi and approached the bar, I could hear chatter and laughter leaking from inside. I'm not on the moon, okay. Apparently the party had already started. Well, of course, you took your time getting primped. Glamorous and important-looking vampires filled up every corner, sipping from wine glasses filled with red liquid. Most of them were dressed in high-end fashion, complete with the proudly reserved air of those who could afford it. It was a strangely refined atmosphere for Saturnalia, a place that normally felt nostalgic and homey. Valkii. Just as I stepped inside, someone called my name, right next to my ear. Hello, Heath? Yeah. It was Heath, holding a small platter of drinks in one hand. You look incredible, like even more of a star than usual. His voice was calm and gentle as always, barely audible over the guest chatter. But his normal smile didn't appear, not even as the moments passed by. Are you feeling okay, Heath? Yes, I'm alright, thanks for asking about me. It was obviously a lie, but he did seem grateful that I'd asked. Are you sure? You really don't seem okay. No, really, I'm sure. He picked at his scarf with his free hand, toying with the fabric. It's so strange, isn't it? Not so long ago, you and I were standing right here talking with the Golgotha. I just hope tonight ends better, with blood kept in the glasses, not spilled all over the floor. I think it'll be fine. No one here seems like the fighting type. No, they're not. Not regular fighting, at least. I'm sorry, Valkii, but I should probably... As Heath spoke, I heard the bar's entrance swing open for a new arrival. At that moment, the whole room's atmosphere suddenly seemed to shift. People were edging away from the door, muttering quietly among themselves. When I glanced to see who stepped into the bar, I figured. Of course. Here he comes to wreck the day. I'm just kidding, I don't think he's that bad. Marcus, who seemed unfazed by his cold welcome, strolled past us. I noticed a flood of wary looks following him, some outright aggressive, others cautiously fascinated. Fear of the unknown, Heath murmured beside me, watching Marcus disappear around the corner. Lovecraft, didn't he say that the unknown is mankind's greatest fear? And our fears attract us, pulling us in. I think Marcus understands that better than anyone. I wonder why he's here. Charisse might have asked him, or else he just showed up. He likes to do that. He slowly trailed off, his eyes never meeting mine. I'm sorry, but I should go serve these drinks. Maybe we can talk after the party. His smile was obviously forced. Already he was starting to shift away from me, like he was impatient to leave. Why don't you just tell me what's wrong? For a moment, his eyes darted around in panic, before he let out a sigh of defeat like a child caught in a lie. I can't. Not right now, I'm sorry. As soon as everyone leaves, we can talk, I promise. Are you sure it can wait that long? Of course, yes. It's nothing to worry about, really. I'll see you later, Valkii. Sometimes a little bit of hard loving. You gotta give him a little bit of hard loving. Heath slipped into the crowd, swiftly disappearing amidst the various guests. I'm still confused as to why we didn't talk about why he looked terrified after kissing me. He was acting so strangely. What could have been bothering him that much? If it was just negotiations breaking down, he could have surely told me about that. But it seemed like I was part of whatever was distressing him. Maybe it was related to that night in my hotel room. Yes, why have we not talked about this yet? Mulling over my thoughts, I wandered up to the bar. It was fairly empty since most of the vampires were flitting about in groups. But a few moments after I settled down, a thin, finely dressed man slid into the bar stool beside me, propping his elbows on the counter and letting out a faint groan. Do you understand parties, or rather, the point of these social interactions? It's all so confusing. Trust me, I don't like them any more than you do. All I've heard about you, I figured you'd be quite popular in these things. It sounded like I'd only caught half of his reply. Had he trailed off or mumbled something and I'd missed it over the chatter? Oh, I'm sorry, my name is Jasper. He smiled at me warmly, offering a slightly awkward nod. I'm not very adept in situations like these. Strangers everywhere, idle chit-chat. In fact, I'm only here because of my partner, but he... Again, I only caught half of his reply, but this time he definitely hadn't opened his mouth for another half. Are you a Golgotha? He nodded, apparently not offended at my direct question. I am, yes, but I'm not one of Andre's. I'm not the only Golgotha in Charisse's employ, though. In fact, Jasper suddenly let out a soft gasp. Oh, how considerate of me. I don't meet new people very often, so I I suppose the best way to explain things would be reality and headspace are somewhat blurred for me, so quite naturally half of my thoughts I can give voice to. He gestured to his head with a light chuckle, wordlessly filling in the gap. I do apologize for the inconvenience. Oh, it's fine, thanks for telling me. Oh dear, you must have been very confused. You probably still are. As Jasper's cheerful laughter faded into silence, our conversation stalled for a few moments. The chatter around us carried on. I noticed a number of glances aimed my way, studying me with more than passing curiosity. A few people even waved or tried to beckon me over, faces I'd never seen before in my life. By the way, Jasper spoke up again, but his voice was a little softer and more hesitant. I saw you speaking with that white-haired boy. What was his name again? Heath? For a while, he used to have... Everyone believed he was Sharice's favourite, not so much anymore, though. Why? What happened? Well, nothing specific happened, he shrugged, absently ruffling a hand through his hair. Was uprooted by the slightest breeze, so to speak. Most of us probably saw it coming, except for him. With a quiet, sympathetic sigh, Jasper rubbed a finger along his cheek. If I might offer a little insight, since it seems like you're close to him. No matter how much Heath loves you, if you shatter his illusions, I don't know if he'll forgive you. Cast aside order for chaos. Wait, what was the rest of that? If I may have your attention, a commanding voice suddenly echoed through the bar, which quickly grew hushed. All eyes flicked towards where Sharice stood, her glasses glinting as she surveyed the crowd before her. Jasper's attention was drawn to her too, cutting short whatever he was about to say. Tonight, as some of you already may know, marks an important occasion. Negotiation efforts with the other houses are no longer in motion. There were a few gasps, but mostly enthusiastic clapping came in response. I finally spotted Heath across the bar, but he didn't look surprised or even distressed. His glassy stare was only fixated on an empty space. We have done everything in our power to compromise to reach across the aisle, hoping that we might strengthen our coven rather than weaken it. But Randall and Andre, along with all their followers, have shown us that they prioritize winning over the chance of unity. Soft murmurs of agreement and vehement nods met Sharice's words. And so, from this day forward, we will pour all our efforts into defending against these destructive threats. A defense greatly bolstered by the help of a very recent arrival, Valkii. Don't bring attention to me. As soon as Sharice mentioned my name, several people instantly looked towards me, and everyone else's gazes followed. Some of the looks were openly suspicious, and a few whispers bubbled up among the guests as Sharice continued. Valkii, despite the unorthodox nature of her turning, has been an invaluable agent to me. Fearlessly hunting down threats, establishing diplomatic relations, going undercover, and traversing many parts of LA that are currently dangerous for our people. Recently, during a high-stakes meeting with the Golgotha in this very bar, she even risked her own life saving Heath, another agent in my employ, from gunfire. Sharice's dramatic retelling of events elicited fresh gasps and whispers, and more glances were thrown my way. And though she may no longer stand as a bridge between us and the other houses, with compromise fallen by the wayside, let Valkyie's triumphs, despite all the odds stacked against her, serve as inspiration and light to us in the darkest hour of our divided coven. The bar filled with thunderous applause, enthusiastic whistles piercing through the clapping. Even Jasper was applauding beside me, beaming encouragingly. But as the loud sounds of approval died down and Sharice slipped away after a small bow, my eyes suddenly met Heath's. He was gazing straight at me with a sort of intensity that I'd never seen before. I couldn't tell what it stemmed from, but for a moment time seemed to slow down, as if we were caught in a movie. The platter in his hands began to tremble. Blood started overflowing from the glasses he held, splashing onto the floor. Let's give it a save. I don't really know what to do here. Rush over to him. I threw my weight forward, ready to dash to Heath's side, but before I could take another step, a deafening crash flooded the bar. Instantly, the chatter fell silent and everyone's eyes turned towards the source. Heath froze in pure horror. At his feet was a pool of blood and broken glass, slowly spreading over the tile. One moment passed, then another and another. The stares focused on Heath weren't accusing or amused or even surprised. They were pitying. Something wrong with their art there. Without a word, Heath ran straight past the crowd, heading for the door. No one stopped him as he slammed through the exit, disappearing outside. But soon enough, hushed whispers turned to baffled murmurs, and then, as if nothing had happened, the loud chatter resumed just like before. Oh dear, Still gazing in the direction Heath had gone, Jasper let out a worried sigh, rubbing his cheek with a hand. I think maybe you'd better go after him, Valkii. He could use some grounding too. He gently motioned towards the door, nodding at me. You're right, I've got to go after him. Bye, Jasper. Be careful not to let him fade away from you, he murmured to me, lips pressing solemnly together, then turned away. Turning away from the bar, I hurried towards the door. Outside, Heath was nowhere to be seen, but when I focused on following his scent, I realized he hadn't gone far. The path led me to an alley nearby, deserted and silent, sure enough as I stepped further inside. Heath was huddled on the ground beside a dumpster, hugging his knees to his chest and gently rocking back and forth. Beside him, I glimpsed a shining needle and smelled something bitter. Heath, please tell me what's wrong. Instead of raising his head to look at me, he only lowered it further in the reclusive, self-loathing way of someone who didn't want to be seen. I don't think you should be here, Valkii. I'll be fine, don't worry about me. I don't know if I want to be hard with him on this one or not, so I'm just going to save it. Please don't push me away, Heath. I don't want to, Valkii, believe me, but I hate the thought of dragging you down even more. For a few long moments he went quiet, giving off such a defensive atmosphere that I almost wondered if he'd refuse to talk to me. But at last he reluctantly shifted over a little, an unspoken acceptance for me to sit beside him. I lowered myself onto the cold asphalt, its icy touch seeping through my clothes. Heath kept his face turned away, as if still unable to look me in the eye. Can't believe this is happening, that you're here comforting me in an alley after I ran away from everyone. He exhaled sharply, a sound that didn't quite make it into a laugh. It's so pathetic and unbelievable. Even the worst soap operas have scenes that are better than this. It's not pathetic, no. What made you run away like that? Let's do that one instead. He stared at his blood-splattered ankles and boots, an empty, distant look in his eyes. Back there, inside, for a moment, I felt like I didn't exist. No, that isn't it. I felt like it wouldn't matter whether I existed or not. He touched his face with trembling fingers, as if to make sure his own body was still there. That if I disappeared tomorrow, no one would ever notice. What made you feel like that? You really have no idea? Hopelessness because of the war? He glanced at me for a split second, eyes wide and dismayed, before letting out a quiet, apologetic sigh. That's unfair of me. I shouldn't expect you to. I'm sorry. Despite his sheepish smile, I could still hear a trace of disappointment in his voice. No. 1 second. Okay, I was never a good actor, Valkii. But now, every day of my life, all I do is pretend like I fit in. He nodded towards the... None of the options matter, by the way, I went back and checked. He nodded towards the direction of Saturnalia, though I had the sense he was referring to our whole society. They all know I'm not good at the diplomatic work or even the small tasks that Charisse gives me. It's work she gives me out of pity because she knew my mother. She knew your mother? Charisse loved her movies and admired her elegant poise in interviews, so she hated the idea of my mother rotting away as she aged. It was Charisse who offered to turn my mother herself, so in more ways than one, she feels responsible for me. I couldn't tell if he was accusing her or defending her, but judging from the uncertain look in his eyes, Heath didn't know either. He paused for a moment, then leaning his back against the cold concrete and staring at the sky. In the silence, I heard sirens echoing from somewhere far away, mingling with the dull hum of distant traffic. When every day is one long game of pretend, just pretending you belong, it gets a little hard sometimes. His gaze reluctantly shifted towards me, guilty and ashamed, as if he expected me to lash out at him at any moment. That's why, after I was turned, I started to drink and smoke, and it's why I filled my bathroom with syringes and junkie blood, and... It's why I'm so jealous of you, even though I love you, because everyone here sees you, and I'm like a ghost. Because I don't know what I'm supposed to be anymore. That isn't true, Heath. People care about you. I care about you. But what if I can't care about myself? If even I can't care, how can I expect anybody else to? He gave me a hollow smile, lifting his shoulders in a lackluster shrug. I've always felt like I'm a different person to everyone I talk to. I can't help myself from wanting to please them, to make them love me, no matter how hard I try just to be myself. So I'm not sure who I am sometimes, and sometimes I wonder if there ever was a me. As Heath trailed off into a tired silence, I realised how very different he seemed from our first meeting. There was no coy smirk, no strategic push into my personal space, no theatrical tone in his voice, just quiet desperation. But it's different when I'm with you, Valkii. Everything you say and do, the way you act, it's so effortless, so natural. The shame slowly washed away from his face, his eyes taking on a reverent gleam. You give me hope and make me happy just by being yourself, and I can never get enough of it. It's better than any other feeling I can remember. Even if you can never love me the way I love you, I'm so happy I got to meet you. Despite Heath's words, there was something resigned and distant in his smile. Again, I don't know really, but I love you the way you are. You don't need to act like anybody else. Heath closed his eyes, a pure warm delight spreading over his features. People laugh when I tell them that I believe in fate, but you came to Hollywood right when the whole city needed you most, like you were sent here to carry us out of the darkness. And it's so hard not falling impossibly in love with your savior. He sounded so self-assured, so happy that it was hard to doubt his words. Yet somewhere deep inside my gut, I felt a faint sense of unease. Valkii. Emotion trembled in Heath's voice, but I couldn't tell if he wanted to cry, laugh, or pull me into an embrace. His hand slowly drifted to my cheek, fingers tracing across my skin as delicately as if he were cradling a glass doll. I wish I could tell you how I feel right now, but I don't think I could put it into words. Before I had a chance to reply, he suddenly leaned forward, covering my mouth with his. It was the hardest kiss he'd ever given me, raw and desperate, his fangs nearly piercing into my lip. The next moment, it was over, but instead of pulling back, Heath stayed close enough that our lips brushed together when he spoke. Right now, more than anything, I want to... Ooh, I don't know what to say. I want to say this or this, but... I hope there's no NSFW stuff in here. Do you want to touch me? Yes. I want to touch you, I want you to touch me. One of his hands slipped behind my head, his cold fingers tracing along the nape of my neck. Heath moved his body closer to mine, his arm falling to curl possessively around my waist, almost crossing the distance between our lips once more. Valkii, I need you so badly, but... A flash of hesitance froze his features, but the next moment he seemed to regain his resolve. We're numb to a lot of pain, which means we're numb to most pleasure too. And to feel what we do, I have to... Slipping one hand inside his jacket, Heath pulled something to hold before me. In his palm rested two small objects, a fresh gleaming syringe and a small black bottle. It's a mixture, some stimulants, some ketamine, just the right amount to make you feel something. Please take it with me so I know you can feel it too. I'm gonna say no. No, Heath, we don't have to take it to feel something, but I'm sorry, I can't do this without it. Then maybe we better not. His fingers curled tightly shut around the syringe and bottle. He didn't try to hide his disappointment, but he didn't argue either, closing his eyes and slightly inclining his head. I'm sorry, I don't know what came over me. Of course we shouldn't do anything. We're in public anyway. Okay. He sank his teeth into his bottom lip, making it turn even paler. For a moment, he didn't seem to have the courage to say anything. If it's not too much to ask, could we just stay here a little while? I think I might pause, go back and see what happens, and see if I actually want that outcome or not. I went through it, and it's kind of depressing. I feel kind of depressed now. I went through like most of the options. I'm just depressed now. It's not a... I don't know. I don't think it's a good idea. Anyway. Could we just stay here a while? Pulling his legs up against his chest, Heath turned his gaze towards the dark sky. We don't need to talk. I think maybe we shouldn't. Put my arm around Heath. I curled my arm around Heath's waist, pulling him against my side. After a moment, he let his head rest on my shoulder, a little hesitantly at first, but eventually nestling in close. For some reason, he seemed so small and thin in my arms, like a paper doll. He looked the same as he always did, but as he curled up beside me, I had the sense I was holding something very fragile. We spent the rest of the party like that, away from the noise and chatter. There wasn't a heartbeat, a breath, or an ounce of body warmth between us, and yet I felt like we were more alive than all of the smiling vampires inside. God, I'm depressed. I don't know. I like Heath a lot, and it's so sad. I don't think I'm going to be able to help this person. Eventually, when Charisse came out to find us, Heath and I had to part ways. But as he waved goodbye to us standing at the entrance to his bar, I thought I saw a small smile on his face. If not from hope, then from relief. Let me grab that open again. A faint drip echoed from somewhere inside the garage. It filled my ears as I walked along, my thoughts drifting absently. God, there's something wrong with my nose. Taking a drink. I was on my way back from my last mission. Charisse had sent me to blow up an old storage facility. Some upstart vampire, an Iskari who defected to Randall's side, was using the place to hide weapons. She'd sent me out alone, so I'd purposefully sabotaged my own explosives. I planted the explosive inside, but sabotaged them carefully. That way, if Charisse sent another agent to see why the facility hadn't exploded, I could pretend someone tampered with it after I left. Now I was on my way back to the hotel, taking a shortcut through the parking garage. With any luck, I'd arrive with time to spare and have the rest of the night to myself. A few weeks had passed since the night at Saturnalia with Heath. I'd been so busy travelling around LA on various assignments that I hadn't got much time to see him. He sneaked into my room now and then, long enough for us to hold each other, but it always seemed like he wanted to tell me something. Hopefully, one day soon, I could figure out what was bothering him and why he was keeping it a secret. The garage was unnervingly quiet. All I could hear was the sound of my own footsteps and the droning hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I never figured out who kept these lights on, or if some electrical company had just never bothered to shut them off. Somewhere far above me, thunder rumbled outside, announcing a storm that might have already arrived. Just another calm night as a vampire in Hollywood. As I approached the staircase that would lead me outside, something made me freeze. I felt a presence nearby. It was approaching me from the staircase, and from above. Find somewhere to hide, I guess. My eyes darted around, searching for any possible hiding spot. The only place I could go was behind the cars, but they wouldn't hide my scent from any vampires. A moment later, a different rumble started to echo from above, the sound of a car engine. This wasn't a chance encounter or a friendly visit. I was being ambushed. Over there, get her. She's probably trying to run away, just like I said she would. What? The stairway door flew open, letting out a group that rushed towards me. Almost simultaneously, a large black car pulled around the corner, angling itself to block my path. Within seconds, I found myself being surrounded, but almost all of the presences I felt weren't vampires. They were humans. Wait. We want to talk to her first. Two figures pushed through the group, swaggering towards me. Something about the woman seemed strangely familiar. No, she was definitely familiar. I'd seen her in the hotel lobby angrily shouting at the desk clerk. She must have been an Iskari. I didn't recognize the man, but he had the normal air of a Mavar. Only 10 times more bloodthirsty. Oh, this is gonna be good. Yeah, it'll be fucking great. I can't wait to wipe that dumbass smile off your face. The Mavar snarled eagerly at me, almost salivating like a mad dog. We're not going to kill you, though. Flashing me a delighted smirk, the Iskari motioned to the group surrounding me. These guys, they're hunters, and we made a deal with them to hand you over. They're really interested in all the juicy vampire secrets you know about, and they're gonna have a great time dragging them out of you. Too afraid to attack me alone, huh? Why take any chances? Some of your shitty friends might be around. She spat out the word friends with obvious scorn. This chick and I, normally we hate each other's guts, but we hate your fucking guts even more, even if she doesn't hate you for the right reasons. The two exchanged glances, returning their hateful stares to me a moment later. What did I do? You act like you're working with Charisse, don't you? But you just treat your job like it's whatever. You don't appreciate it. Getting to work with her is a privilege. Some of us tried for years to get her attention. I'm working with what I've been given. How is that my fault? Because she just gave it to you, some regular little Iskari who doesn't deserve anything. It's not about who deserves it. If you worked hard, you'd get my spot. That's just... Ha 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 ha. Listen, who cares? She's gonna be dead by the end of the night, because Karma's a bitch. What did I do? As if on cue, the hunters impatiently shifted around me, muttering to themselves. From what it sounded like, they were gonna force me along in the car nearby. Alright, let's get this over with. I want to hear less bullshit coming out of her mouth, more screaming. Wait, maybe... The Ascari bit her lower lip, glancing hesitantly towards her partner. Maybe we should... Huh? What, you get cold feet or something? Well, if you're gonna pussy out, then I'll... The next moment, right as I blinked. Suddenly, the Mavar's head was gone. The only thing left was an empty, bleeding stump. A circular saw blade lay on the ground just past his body next to his severed head. Ah! The girl shrieked, stumbling back from the Mavar's corpse. A second huge blade whizzed past, slicing one of the hunter's arms in half. Ah! Where's it coming from? I don't... Shit, no, please. Within seconds, chaos and panicked shrieks filled the garage. Everywhere I looked, blood splattered the floor, limbs and chunks of flesh falling in red pools. All the hunters were wildly firing their guns, trying to hit the unseen attacker. One of them turned to run, racing for the exit, until the saw blade gored through his back, toppling him to the ground. Tried to rescue some of the hunters. I darted over to one of the humans on the ground, starting to pull him up towards safety, but from his empty eyes and the huge blade in his chest, I quickly realized he was dead. All of the others looked the same, unmoving, decapitated, or brutally pierced in the heart. The bloodbath didn't take much longer to finish. Before long, all the hunters were dead, their bodies littering the concrete. The only vampire who'd escaped was the Ascari. She dashed away as fast as her legs could take her, disappearing around the corner and not looking back. As her footsteps faded away, I was left alone again, surrounded by a sea of mangled corpses. But in the eerie, too peaceful silence that followed, I heard the stairway door open and close. Follow the attacker. That sound had to be the mysterious attacker leaving. Knowing this would be my only chance to see them, I sprinted for the stairs, slamming the door open. There wasn't any normal vampiric scent for me to follow. It was something strange, alien. Still, I heard footsteps climbing above me, so I hurried desperately after them. When I reached the surface, I didn't see anyone at first, until I glanced down the alley just in time to glimpse a tall, dark-haired figure stalking into the street. I followed him as quickly as I could, rushing out of the alley. Out on the main road, a huge crowd was gathered for some kind of celebrity event. The man must have disappeared into the bustling throng of people because I couldn't see him anywhere. In that crowd, there was no way I'd be finding him anytime soon. His presence was just so hard to pin down, like it belonged to a ghost or something else I couldn't even comprehend. I wonder who that was. Disappointed, I ended up hailing a cab, riding back to the hotel with even more questions in my mind. Some flecks of blood, both the hunters and the vampires, from the smell of it, had landed on my face and clothes. The taxi driver gave me a funny look, but he didn't seem as freaked out as he probably should have been. Maybe it wasn't his first time seeing a passenger like me. By the time I reached the hotel, I felt a little more composed. It was difficult to process what happened, both for me and the hotel clerk, who stared at me open-mouthed as I arrived. Miss Locke would like to speak with you on the phone. Alright. After quickly dialing up a number, the clerk handed me the receiver. On the second ring, a voice picked up. Valkii, is that you? What on earth happened? You should have been back some time ago. I heard a touch of worry in her voice. I was attacked on my way back. By whom, exactly? Oh, for heavens, go on, just tell me everything. At Charisse's frustrated command, I explained what had happened in the parking garage. She listened silently, and I could almost hear the deep crease knitting on her brow. When I finally finished, she let out a long sigh, the following clink probably Charisse taking off her glasses. You seem to have this remarkable talent for attracting the worst sort of attention. If none of your attackers escaped, I have no doubt the news will spread like wildfire, so be prepared for any rumors drifting about. And the individual who rescued you is nearly just as worrying. Have you any idea who it was? No, but it must have been someone who knew me. Yes, most likely, but the behavior doesn't resemble Marcus Randall or Heath. It must have been someone else. I suppose they didn't want to have their identity known. She exhaled another sigh, sounding as resigned as she did confused. Well, regardless of your mystery savior, you'll have to be on high alert from now on, Valkii. I doubt most of LA's vampires feel so passionately about you, but after tonight, we can't ignore the possibility. I don't know what I did to get them so worked up. Take my word for it, Valkii. People don't need much provocation to get worked up. Even if you accidentally shake their views of the world, they'll take it to They'll take it as a grave personal offence, as if you threatened their very existence. Consider curbing your behaviour, assuming you don't want to deal with more attacks every night. After clearing her throat pointedly, Charisse paused for a moment. I'm out of the city right now on business, but I'll be back at the hotel tomorrow. We'll discuss things further then. Do try and stay alive until I've returned. I will, and you should do the same. Indeed, our times haven't come yet, Valkii. Click. With that, she abruptly hung up. I handed the phone back to the anxious-looking clerk, who offered me a temporary change of clothes again. By the time I'd gotten the blood off my face and hair, there were still a few hours until sunrise. I had time to venture out into the city again if I felt brave enough, and we will go somewhere in the next one.